In today's tutorial, we'll be painting a little bouquet of messy watercolor line art florals, all within Procreate. In this week's video, we're going to freestyle some simple watercolor florals, then finish them off with line art and messy details. We'll be using a few different brushes from my watercolor illustration brush set for this entire piece, which I'll leave a link to on screen and in the video description. The color palette is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas. I've listed my specs on screen, and let's begin. Okay, we've got our brand new canvas, and the first thing we're going to do is paint in our main florals. I'm just going to freehand this out. So I'm going to start with my medium paint round brush, and I'm going to grab the lightest pink color and just start plotting out where these flowers are going to be. So this brush is pressure sensitive, so it's really easy to draw petals. So I'm just going light pressure and then heavy pressure, or you can just keep consistent pressure if you want them all the same size. So that was pretty consistent pressure around. I can do some smaller ones. So these are just fictitious flowers, so you can do whatever you want here. There's so much freedom with this style. Let's create the flower buds. So in order to make those, I'm just going to put a few that are together, so about 4 together. So when I'm painting these, I'm looking at scale and variety because I want it to continue being interesting for the viewer no matter where they look at it. So I usually reposition things a little bit after I draw them, so I make sure that I leave a fair amount of room between elements so I can just grab them individually. And now we can center this on our canvas. And if you have uniform and snapping turned on, you'll get those crosshairs. Once you have your base bouquet, now we're going to add in some extra details to it. So I'm going to add in the stamens of these, which are going to be right on top. So create a brand new layer, and I'm going to grab the soft bloom stamp right here. And I'm going to switch to the mustard color or the yellow ochre. And let's see, the size of this is about 6%, and I'm just going to stamp in here a few times, and that'll give it a nice softer, more watercolor look in here. And this one's also pressure sensitive, so I can get larger ones by just pressing harder on the screen. So I've got my stamens in here, and now we can start completing this by drawing in our stems. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, drag this underneath our flowers layer. We can start labeling some of these. Let me label this one flower base. This one's going to be stamens. And this one's going to be stems. For our stems, I'm going to grab this dark blue color. I'm going to grab the round liner brush up here, and the size of this is going to be about 8%, and draw the stems coming down. And you can see that I'm omitting where they cross behind it because the transparency that watercolor naturally has, these brushes also have, so you can see through them. So I don't want that to happen, so you can clean them up if you want to be super precise with it, but I'm just being loose and trying to make sure that I don't interfere with existing petals. So if I draw this down, I'm just going to make the eye believe that it goes all the way through. And I'm not crazy about how this is finishing down here, so I'm just going to draw some of these stems coming out. So we've got our bouquet started. Now we need to add in some extra detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a transition where these flower buds meet the stems. So those need to be on top of the flower itself. So I'm just going to create a brand new layer up at the very top and just paint these in with the round liner brush. Super rough. I like the messy, almost unfinished look. That's why I like having some sketchier elements in here. Okay, once that is done, now we can paint in our leaves. So I'm going to come down here, tap on the stems layer, create a brand new layer, label this one leaves. I'm going to grab the medium paint round brush, and because this is a pressure sensitive brush, I can go little pressure, lots of pressure, little pressure, and draw leaves really quick and easily. So I'm being really careful where I'm drawing these so I don't hit other petals. So I can just erase that away. Let me make this a little smaller. I'm just being really careful not to show through too many of these petals. And I always like adding one of these style of leaves where it kind of droops down. I also want to add in some extra color to our petals. That way we can blend those in and make it look more watercolor-like. So I'm going to create a brand new layer right above the flower base layer, and this one's just going to be some extra pink. I'm going to keep the medium paint round brush selected, but switch to this almost reddish pink color and just paint in some extra color, and we're going to blend this. So this is going to contribute to the more messy look. If you don't like the messy style, then you can just omit this. Once you have those details in, now we're going to smudge them. So this is where it really starts looking like realistic watercolor. So we're going to grab the smudge tool and then come down here and choose the spot bleed brush. And I'm just going to smudge this. My size is about 7% here. And you can stipple if you want a softer transition. I like pulling it out and then stippling. And if it goes outside the lines, like all the better in my mind, because I like that messy look. But if you want it to look more refined and consistent, then just make sure that you're staying within the lines. Now that we have that, I also want to add a little bit of messiness to these leaves. That way it mimics the same style that we've got going on. Like, I don't want it to be too messy where the flowers are and then be crisp and clean where the leaves are. I want everything to feel really consistent. So I'm going to come where my leaves are and just mess these up a little bit too with the same smudge tool. So now that we have our messier watercolor bouquet, I'm going to add a little string onto the bottom. I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab the sketching pencil brush and switch to that yellow ochre and just draw some lines in right here. And then we can draw a bow. Now that we have our bouquet, now we can add in some detail with our line art. So I'm going to create a brand new layer up at the top. Let's label this one line art. I'm going to make this black, so double tap where black is to get true black. I'm going to continue using the sketching pencil brush. I'm going to bring this down to about 4%. And now we're going to add in all the details. So if you caught my line art for beginners tutorial a few weeks ago, you saw us go in the opposite direction. We drew all of our line art first, then we filled it in with watercolor. So I want to show you that you can add in the line art after the fact. So what I'm going to do is just sketch out the stamen area, and I keep my hand pretty loose. So I have lines that are very organic. They're not like perfectly circular or anything like that, because that's not normal for nature. So I just I hold my stylus really loosely. I can actually even make these petals softer. I can smudge the petals as well to kind of fit in with my lines a little bit better. Let's also add some detail into the stamen. I'm just going to put in some dots here. And there we go. So you can see what a difference that makes compared to the rest of the bouquet. It's still watercolor, but now we have extra detail added in. And I also want to try smudging some of these petals in here just to soften that look up and keep things even more consistent with that softer style. So now I've got areas that are going beyond the line art. I'm going to come back to the line art layer, come back to my sketching pencil brush, and continue doing this for the rest of all of my flowers. I'm going to draw the stems down wherever I have color. I also have lines. And then for the leaves, you could add in, an extra line right here if you wanted to for the leaf detail. I think I'm going to leave mine empty though. Okay, I've got my bouquet all set now, and since it's a really large size, I do want to reduce it because I want to add some lettering to this. I want to keep a version that's really large. That way I have this version as well if I ever want to go back to it or to use it for something else in the future. So I'm going to group everything that I have together and label this one large bouquet. And I'm going to duplicate this, so slide it to the left and choose duplicate. I'm going to turn off the visibility of the bottom group, and now I have this top group selected. I'm going to reduce the size of it so I can make room for that lettering. I'm just going to add in my lettering now, so I'm going to turn on my drawing guide, head into the wrench, canvas, toggle on drawing guide. I'm just going to leave the default here because I just need a straight line to make sure my letters stay straight. I'm going to grab my round liner brush for the lettering. Let's create a brand new layer up at the top and label this one lettering. And the size of my brush is 8%. And I'm going to center this because I'm going to stack some lettering instead of having it all in one line. So I'm going to move this up and create a brand new layer for the second part of this. And now I'm going to center that right where I want it, make sure it feels comfortable. And now I can combine these by pinching them. I can turn off my drawing guide now. The last thing we need to do is just add some watercolor paper texture detail. This is also optional, but it does make it seem a lot more realistic. So up at the very top, create a brand new layer. Label this one paper texture, and I'm going to grab black, so double tap where black is, come into your brushes, and I'm going to grab the medium tooth paper texture. You want to make sure the size is up at max, zoom out, and then paint across your canvas until the entire thing is filled with this paper texture. It's a pattern brush, so as long as you get all the areas, it will seamlessly repeat. We zoom in here, you can see that really pretty paper texture. To make it blend just a little bit better, I'm going to change the blend mode of this from normal to multiply. And if you want to add in some more messy details, I like adding some finishing paint splatter. So I'm going to come underneath the texture layer and create a brand new layer, and this one's just going to be called splatter. And I'm going to grab first my yellow color. Let's grab the rounded splatter brush. The size of my brush is about 5%, and I'm just going to put some dots. Try not to go overboard. Grab the darkest pink color and the blue. Once again, links to everything mentioned in this tutorial are right in the video description, including the free color palette, the watercolor illustration brush set, and I've also popped in a link to my watercolor florals in Procreate online course. If you like creating artwork like this and want to advance your skills, it's a 10-project course with lots of watercolor florals. So there's a link right in the video description to that as well. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next week.